for the Women's Week at EHAC. And the webinar today is Women in Leadership Inspiring a Movement. And this year, the UN Women's theme for International Women's Day was Women in Leadership Achieving an Equal Future in a COVID-19 world. Women as leaders and decision makers at all levels are critical to advancing gender justice and gender equality, and to furthering economic, social, and political progress for all. We are seeing examples of female leaders emerging from across generations to crossweave their knowledge and drive for change. The role of women's participation as leaders in healthcare is an underexplored but important part of the conversation around improving healthcare systems. Despite their dominance in the workforce, women are largely underrepresented in the senior leadership ranks of the industry. So in celebration of Women's Week, EHAC brings forth the personal journeys and perspectives of women leaders from the corporate, social, educational, and entrepreneurial space. So I would now like to introduce you to our moderator for the evening, Miss Virginia Sharma. Virginia Sharma joined JioSaavn as their Vice President, Brand Solutions, to drive the company's global digital ad monetization efforts across platforms. In her last role, she led LinkedIn's marketing solutions in India. She was recognized as one of the top 100 business leaders by Exchange for Media in 2020. She was awarded the Economic Times Women Ahead in 2018 and the Impact Top 50 Women in Marketing, Media and Advertising 3 years in a row from 2018 to 2020. Welcome, Virginia.
Thank you.
On the panel, we have with us Shama Karkal, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Swasti Health Catalyst and is a social development expert. She leads Swasti's response to public health issues across India and global engagement with government, private sector, academia, and non-profit partners. Her experience spans 2 decades. She's an alumnus of the School of Social Work, University of Maryland. Shama has worked in India and in the US on public health, including HIV prevention, market innovations for health, and community system strengthening. Then we have with us Dr. Priyanjali Datta, who is a doctor turned entrepreneur and innovator. She's the founder and CEO at Aaroogya, recipient of the top 50 global healthcare leaders in 2018 and youngest woman entrepreneur in 2019. She started her organization at the age of 19 and believes that sustainability is the innovation for taking healthcare to the last mile. Aaroogya aims to create an empowered and enabled task force of semi-skilled healthcare workers going door to door to fight cancer. They have reached almost 3 million people across rural India as a part of this effort. Welcome, Shama and Priyanjali. Then I would like to move on to Nita Sachan, who is our third panelist, and she is the VP Investments at Endiya Partners. She has over 20 years of experience working at the interface of business solutions, innovation, and technology. Her expertise is in the area of medical devices, genomics, biotech, and pharmaceuticals. Prior to Endiya, she worked at Sachan, leading their strategy and new product development for their medical business unit. She believes in being an enabler in the ecosystem for getting world-class technology to market. Our fourth panelist for the evening is Dr. Sudha Vidyasagar, and she is working as a professor of medicine at Kasturba Medical College, Manipal. She has been the head of Department of Medicine in the same college from 2010 to 2015. She graduated from Stanley Medical College, Chennai, and did her post-graduation in general medicine from Kasturba Medical College. Her areas of interest lie in patient care, academic activities, and research. She is actively involved in clinical trials as well. She regularly organizes educational meetings for young diabetics as part of a national project and has built a fund to support these patients with insulin and free investigations to ease their financial burden. So with this, I would like to welcome all the panelists for this session, and we're looking forward to having a lovely discussion. And I'll hand this over to Virginia to take it forth.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the introduction, Arnaz, and thank you for the opportunity. I wanted to first and foremost, of course, to these 4 amazing professionals, thank them for everything that they do for our health and well-being. I think that, as I was saying to sort of a little bit in the pre-discussion, they take for granted everything that they do every day because it's what they do. But what they do really makes a difference to the world. So I wanted to start by actually we've heard a little bit about the professional accomplishments, but a little bit about their sort of journey and stories, and give them an opportunity to tell us a little bit about their own journey and things that stand out for them. So let me start with Shama. And Shama, if you want to share a little bit about your personal story, your background. Obviously, you've spent a lot of time sort of around communities, being a community organizer, working in the NGO sector. Obviously, you're very passionate about what work you do. It must be hard some days, but tell us a little bit about what you do for the community and what keeps you going.
Thanks so much, Virginia, and a pleasure to be here on this panel with everyone. So what I do currently is work in primary healthcare, really. I lead a very large team of, I think we're about 230 people right now. And we work in most parts of India and overseas as well, providing technical support. So a lot of the on-ground work, of course, is done by my team, but our focus is on primary healthcare. And I think over the last 16, 17 years, what we've really been invested in is how do we make well-being real for the poorest and the marginalized, right? I think when we talk about wellness and well-being today, it's sort of something that in the middle class and the elite is easy to imagine. But how do we make it real for those who may not, couldn't even think about it? They're daily wage earners, right? They're domestic help, they may be taxi drivers. So how do we make that actually possible? Is sort of what we're working on. And therefore we work with people, we work with a lot of community organizations and co-create with them, because honestly, I think that was something as a teenager I learned and actually brought me into this, because it's not that people don't know what needs to be done. They just need to be supported with different skill sets. And when we bring those skill sets together, I think people can create transformation. And that's actually what keeps me going, because I have this strong belief. I've seen how people transform themselves, transform their families, their communities, and the belief that we can create a better world is actually sort of what keeps me going. And I first learned that as a teenager, and actually have been in this space volunteering since I was pretty much 18 or 19. And that's what actually drew me into this. At one point, I think when I was doing my 11th or 12th grade, I said I wanted to be a doctor, but I said, they take a person at a time. I want to try and do this at a larger scale. How do we do this, whole populations at a time? And that's what got me into sort of public health and community organizing. So yeah, I'll stop there and I'm happy to talk more.
Yeah, that's great. So picking up the thread of knowing what you wanted to do at 19, Dr. Priyanjali, you've accomplished so much at a very young age. When did you know that this was what you wanted to do? And obviously you use technology as a way to actually drive broad scale impact. You too became a doctor and then decided you wanted to drive impact at a broader scale. So obviously there's something in common there. Do you want to share a little bit about your story?
I could totally relate to what Shama was saying about her teenage and how she decided to be there, what she's doing as of now. So hello everybody, I'm very glad to be here on the panel with so senior people. They are all motivation for young girls like us, and I'm very glad to be a part of this panel. How my journey started was a very bright revelation during my medical studies, when I realized that I couldn't survive in the four walls of the clinics. I was more interested when a larger population was coming and I was getting to tell them more about the disease. And I felt there was a huge gap between the outrageous development of tertiary healthcare versus no development in primary healthcare at that point of time. Now, of course, things are drastically changing towards good in India. And I realized that this space is very less populated and maybe a good idea for me to explore more. So that's how I started the organization Aaroogya when I was in my third year of college. I transformed from being an on-ground worker to learning technology and business to sustain the effort. Now, it's an ongoing process where we used to go door to door in states like Meghalaya, where I come from, and there are high incidences of cancer cases in women because of tobacco chewing, etc. To realizing the fact that in order to create an accelerated and large scale impact, we needed something which could be adapted across geographies and also be easily consumed. So we developed our proprietary algorithms with the help of artificial intelligence. And we got a lot of support from many mentors who came forward and really made this possible for us, where data science was a new thing in India, growing. And we could give the application, the device, mobile app to the community health workers, who are people like ASHA, A&M in India, mid-level healthcare workers in Africa, who could just go to the women in their community and do primary assessment of basic symptoms of cancer. So that's something has been sustaining over last 4 years. We could also generate revenue and become a luckily a sustainable venture, and now very proudly launched in Africa. So being an Indian innovation launching outside India was a really big motivation for us. And my personal knack towards cancer was a lot of people I have been very close to in my life. I've lost them due to cancer. So my mother has a very rare disease. My grandma also, I lost her due to lung cancer. So it's been quite a motivation for me to do something. So that's why I am.
Thank you for all that you do. Obviously, it's a disease that's becoming more and more common, and it's great to find your energy in your personal journey, because it keeps you going. So we've talked a little bit to Shama about the ability to organize communities and be able to drive impact. Priyanjali about bringing accessible technology that is easy to understand. Dr. Sudha, you've been a doctor for multiple decades, but at a logical point you decided to also teach. So curious about your journey to actually decide to actually take under your wings students of medicine, and how does it feel being, I think the words that you said, I'm not a teacher, but you are, building in the next generation of healthcare leaders. So do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yes. First of all, I didn't decide to add on students as I went by. I chose to be in a teaching institution.
Okay.
So once you finish your medical studies, you have various options. You can either practice, that means you put up a clinic or you put up a hospital of your own and then you work there, or you work for a big organization, private, like Apollo, Fortis, one of those. You also can join a teaching institution like what I did. So we make the decision at the beginning. So I chose to be in academic life. These are two different ways of living life as a doctor. If you're in private practice, you're on your own, and you see your patients and you make your money, but you don't really involve yourself in training the students. Whereas being an academic, being in a teaching institution, you get to do both. You see your patients. So I'm a full-time doctor. I see patients in the outpatient. I see patients in the inpatients. I manage patients in the ICU also. And I'm also involved in teaching and training undergraduates and postgraduates. And because I'm a teacher, I have to keep reading and have to be one step ahead of my students. I think Priyanjali will understand that. So you don't want to be knocked down by a student who knows more than you. It's an ego problem, right? So we have to keep reading. And in fact, my first son, who became a lawyer, told me that he did not want to be a doctor because I was always going to the library to read after I came back from hospital. And he was saying it's the irony of fate that as a lawyer, he's still reading books. So it doesn't leave you. So this decision is something that I made earlier on. And again, the decision is made because I like to teach. I think it's very important to make these decisions based on where you want to be in life and what you enjoy doing. So I realized very early in life that I wouldn't enjoy just seeing patients and making money. Uh, I didn't earn much money because as an academic you don't. If I'd put myself out in private practice, I would have been much richer. But that's a different kind of life. There is a lot of competition there. I'm not saying there is no skill or there is no talent there. There is a lot, but it's the big bad world. So it's a corporate world. And I think some of you are more familiar with it than I am. So I've been in a very protected environment and I've been happy reading, teaching, seeing patients, discussing with my postgraduates and undergraduates, and preparing for classes like nobody's business. So, I put off my children that way from this profession. But yeah, so it's a decision that we make very early in life, and I'm really surprised at the clarity of the younger people on this panel, because I'm the oldest. I don't think I had much clarity, except that I knew that. In fact, I took up medicine because my sister was good in maths, so she took maths. So my father said, "You take biology." That's how I became a doctor. I didn't know a thing. And I was good at maths. In fact, I was a maths talent scholar. I won the national maths talent scholarship, but I didn't mind biology. I mean, I liked biology, and I was quite curious, and I really enjoyed my course. I mean, I was just plain lucky to land up in a place where I enjoyed being by a quirk of fate, because my father told, "You take biology." That's how I became. But the second decision that I took was very conscious. That is when I finished my MBBS. As women, uh, people will know, who are in the profession of being doctors will know that it's if you want to run a house, if you want to have children, and if you want to have a home life, then you do what is called a non-clinical subject. That means you take up pathology, microbiology, which are all like 9 to 5 jobs. Uh, no patient is going to be on your head after that, and you can come home and have a home life. That is where I took a stand. Probably one of the conscious decisions that I made in my life was that I realized that I can't do that. I like people, I like to be with patients, and I love enjoying, interacting with patients. And I decided that I will become a clinical person. That's the first decision I made. The second one was that as women, most at the time when I chose post graduation, which is about 30 years ago, 35 years ago. Uh, God, I'm old. Yeah. So at that time, women were expected to go more into seeing women patients, like being in gynecology. So when you went into the gynecology ward, all your professors were female. Whereas the subject that I chose, medicine, was not a subject that a woman would choose because it was different, and you had to see male patients, and it involved a different kind of life. And I decided at that time, after I finished my MBBS, that I wanted a clinical subject, but I did not want gynecology. So I chose medicine. And I've not regretted that either. And I really, I mean, it's very aligned to my way of living and thinking. And so I've had a good life as far as that is concerned. And like I said, I didn't make much money, but I didn't regret it at all. I mean, what do you do with a lot of money? You put it under the ground and go up. I don't think I don't think it makes much difference at all, as long as you enjoy your time here and you're happy doing what you're doing. I haven't really been a social game changer like the younger people on this panel really heartening to see them. I did not have those ideas earlier on. But what changed for me was when I dealt with diabetic patients, because I got interested in diabetes, and I wrote a book for patients called Living with Diabetes, because I realized that people did not know what to eat, how to live with diabetes. So some of these gaps in our teaching, in the training of students, I tried to fill up. And then I realized that many diabetic patients, especially the younger ones, uh, did not have access to insulin, which was actually life saving for them, and which was like they can't live without insulin, they die. So I realized that not having insulin and not having even a fridge to store the insulin was really a disaster, because many of them came back with complications, many of them came back very sick. And luckily for me, I became part of a national registry for young diabetes. And that spurred me on to organize support groups for them. And then I started organizing educational programs, entertainment, fun, WhatsApp groups for them. And, uh, and I tried to support them with whatever they lacked, whether it was insulin or syringes or needles or fridges or whatever, to see that they are controlled well. Beyond that, I have never done much of what we call as social service. And it is very nice that, like what uh, I think Shama was telling, she wanted to make an impact on the world. I did not. I am a one patient doctor. One patient is on my head, I'll see that that patient is all right. Beyond that, I haven't really moved.
I think over 30 years, if you can count the number of lives you've impacted, I think we'd all agree that you've done your bit and more for all of us combined. But that's amazing. You know, these ideas of moments in your career where decisions have really kind of set the stage for who you're going to be, and then the ability to add to that. That's wonderful. I think we're all smiling because it really is as great a story of that. So Nita, coming to you, you know, Dr. Sudha talked about, you know, being a little bit of the path less taken, right? Not the obvious choices. You ended up in engineering, where I'm sure you were, you know, basically in the minority. And now you're in the venture capital world, and I know for sure you're in the minority as a woman in the industry. Any coincidence that you're picking the path less traveled for most of your career? What's the story behind your journey from being an engineer and now entering into the field that you're in?
So yeah, thank you, and great listening to everyone. So quick correction, I'm not an engineer, but I went to IIT for my biotech. So yeah, I think like Dr. Sudha, you know, was clueless what I wanted to do in a school. So I was a sports girl, you know, always into sports, you know, looking forward to the whole year, waiting for the sports day. And then meanwhile studying on the side, right? And then apparently my classmates say I was a decent student, which is hard to believe. So none of my friends would believe now, you know, the path that I've taken over the time. But my dad was a scientist, and I think, you know, the apple doesn't fall very far from where, you know, your parents are. So I ended up, you know, taking up genetics, and that's when I went to IIT for doing my biotech. And yeah, post that, I did my PhD at University of Kentucky, more in drug development, did my postdoc in cardiology, like most, and then worked with a lot of clinicians. When I came back to India, you know, I wanted to make an impact. So I did a lot of good research, did great impactful papers, you know, if I may say, in the academic world. And then those were like well recognized, but that's not what, you know, like really drove me, because having come from a family of scientists, you know, I grew day in, day out, living science and breathing science. So I thought, where's the biggest impact I can make? And then scientists, you know, even the ones who returned from US had these great ideas, but, you know, none of them, you know, really saw the day, I mean, the light of the day. And I thought, this is where I can really make an impact. So I moved to the business school, and thanks to some really, you know, great mentors early on, I joined the business school. Was part of the incubator as well at Indian School of Business. So that's where I learned a lot of my basics of the, and, you know, I think we will talk somewhere down the line about, you know, mentors, having the mentors and really guiding me. So from fast forward from then to that, you know, I moved to the corporate life, Medtronic, worked on the strategy at, led strategy for entire business unit for medical device business unit at another firm called Scient. And just quite recently, and I moved to venture fund. And I've been working with a lot of startups since my ISB days. And then really, because this is where I really thought, I could help a lot of the technology see the light of the day. I've been extremely passionate about that. And that's where, joining a VC world has, really helped me, at least, or rather, I feel that I can make that impact and see, that some of the Indian technologies can go global is where my personal passion has been. And I'm glad that I can hopefully make that impact in the long run.
That's an amazing journey. And you have to forgive me when you're a business person, anyone that goes to IIT as an engineer, isn't that a terrible sort of stereotype? It's like, oh, IIT must be an engineer. I myself, degrees in political science and my MBA, but that's amazing. Just, a follow-up question, especially for Shama and Nita, you both chose to build your careers back in India. And, a lot of people are thinking about kind of where do they want to bring their skills and their expertise. I'm just curious, your decision to actually do what you do in India, what drove that? Shama, do you want to offer that? I mean, I'm sure you had opportunities to continue doing what you were doing in the US as well.
Yes. No, great question. I've been asked that a lot. So I think, just backing up, right? I think I mentioned earlier that I have had for a very long time this very strong belief that the world needs to be more equitable. I think very early on, I learned sort of the privilege I have. And once I learned that, I think the inequity really started to get to me. And then subsequently, we were talking about decisions, and I think the decision to look at social work or public health, once that decision was made, I think when I moved to the US, it was really, again, circumstance. I didn't plan it, right? I actually applied to only one college in India. And made it to the final round and then was rejected. So it wasn't something that, I really thought. But at that point, when that happened, I said, oh my gosh, I still want to study this. I still want to make my mark. What do I do? And that's how I ended up going to the US. But even when I moved there, I gave myself 5 years. I said, do what you want to do, study, see the world, figure it out, but then you come back, because for me, the sense of giving back and saying that if the change that I want to create doesn't happen in India, it's not really worth it, right? And I think I have now the tremendous opportunity of not only just trying to create change here, but working through collaborations with partners in multiple countries around the world, trying to create that change globally. I think that's been tremendous. So I've been back for 16 years, haven't regretted it. I get to travel. I still have family there. My brother is still based there. I have people all over the world, but I think that was probably the best decision that I made. I would really, for me, it was just this very, very strong sense of I needed to see that change happen here, and I needed to give back here.
That's great. Nita, just picking up on that, your decision to move back, and then Priyanjali, I'll come to you next.
Yeah, I don't think I had a choice there. actually, and I'm going to be very honest, it was, because of my husband that we moved back. But, given the circumstances, and I said, and in fact, for the entire decade, it was like the science was so slow, or we didn't see the healthcare making, at least from the science side of things, right? Like technology or drug development and things like that. It was pretty slow, but due to COVID, so the impact that I'm seeing fast forwarded for the last 10 years, it's just fast forwarded in the last 1 year. And it's so heartening to see that, yes, Indians can produce world-class stuff from here. And then, the decision to move back has not been ever regrettable, right? The first few years, I think it was the culture and, how do you adapt back? So I'd never worked in India. So it was, culturally a reverse culture shock for me to work in India. It took me some time. And then, you then realize that, what can you do? You can't be complaining, how can you be a part of the system and be the change that you want to see, right? So, and then I'm very glad to be, be part of this ecosystem and see amazing entrepreneurs and meet amazing individuals every day. And then that's what excites me working here. I mean, I don't think I would have had that kind of pleasure in US working in, and then be able to make the similar kind of impact that we can make back in India. So very happy to be back home and be able to make that impact.
Yeah, that's great. Priyanjali, as an entrepreneur, you're in a pretty competitive space when it comes to drawing attention. So how have you been able to sort of make your purpose, make your product, make your vision stand out? And I'm sure you go through all the challenges entrepreneurs face. Can you talk a little bit about them and how you've kind of learned to be an entrepreneur?
Sure. It's really been a journey of both ups and downs equally. And I've learned a lot over last few years that I've been working in this space with the help of people and the relationships that I've built. So that's been the key factor. Initially in my career, when I started working for the organization, I had no clue about what is a pitch deck. I mean, that was the basic level where I started from. And I did have a great exposure with my friends who were all boys and happened to be engineers, and I used to hang out a lot with them. And they later on became an inspiration for me because I liked the work they did. They all were in startup space, and they all were working for good companies like Uber, Oyo, and setting up the early market for these companies. And I learned a lot from them passively. So this thrilled me, and I thought I was also attaining a very important skill being in a government college of medical sciences and being explored to healthcare so much. So from there, where I started learning passively from my friends to finding the right people on my path, be it in the space of technology, be it in the space of business. It's been quite interesting because we have failed multiple times. I mean, the biggest obstacle has been always sustainability and fundraising for us. I think Nita ma'am will relate to it. That she must be seeing every entrepreneur every day facing this issue. So that has been the biggest obstacle. Apart from that, finding the right product market fit. That just continues to misfit till it's a never-ending cycle. So every day is a challenge. There's no weekend. The team is always moving in and out. You have to be courageous enough to sustain, say, 10 families and then grow to 20 families. And you have to take up that responsibility of making sure that you are running the company and not just letting the people who are working with you for your vision just have no clue about what next. So as an entrepreneur, I would say these has been the two biggest areas of challenge for me. Fundraising, I have learned a lot about it while doing it, and about product, and very glad that now we have so much exposure and such good mentors that we have in the professional and also in the personal life.
Great. So let's pick up on that thread of mentors. And Dr. Sudha, I want to kind of start with you. Obviously, you've had mentors, but you've also been a mentor. I know that when we did our initial conversation, I think that you were a little skeptical about whether mentors added any value to you or not. But I'm sure people now come to you looking for that kind of role. So how has that been for you, being a mentor, and your thoughts on mentorship overall?
I think when I was skeptical when you talked to me on the prep panel, it was because I couldn't really put my coin on one person and say, this is my mentor. Because as a student, I think all of you will know that you really fall for some teachers. You think they are the best and those are the best subjects to be this thing. But life and subject are very different. So even if I liked a gynecology teacher very much, I realized a little later in life that that's not the life I want to lead. she is very nice, but that's not where I want to be. So after getting into medicine, yes, I had mentors. I had a professor with whom I trained for a long time as his assistant, and it was very nice because I learned not only medicine, but a lot of skills of how to deal with patients. Because uh, being on this side, you will realize, I mean, I realize that patients can come in all kinds of types. So you can get the very nice patient, you can get the bugging patient, you can get the one who will not listen to you, the one who can be aggressive, and the one who will always doubt you. All kinds of patients we deal with. So it's not just medicine that we need to know, but we need to know how to pitch your advice to each one of them. So he kind of taught me that if your patient is not scared of the blood sugar, scare him. And if he's too scared, just say, don't worry. So exactly how we deal with children, we have to deal with patients in India, because Indian patients are quite different from the American patients. And where I work is quite rural, and I have got all kinds of patients doing all kinds of things. So, but it's fun. And yes, I learned skills from my professor. And I did not have a woman mentor, because I told you I chose a field where there were very few women. But now the demography is changing. We are having a lot of women doctors, right from MBBS to post graduation. Even in medicine, now we have 24 postgraduates with us, 12 are women. When I joined, I was the only woman. So it was like a sea of men, and then I'm there. Okay. So I did not have a woman mentor to look up to. I did learn a lot from my husband, because he's the one with the big ideas. So to go on fellowships abroad, to take the next step in life, I did listen a lot to his advice, because I realized that I married a very different person, which is very good. I think you should all marry people who are not at all like you, because you get a completely different worldview. Otherwise, somebody is always saying yes, yes to you. You don't really know what it means to think differently. So I'm a more of a detailed person, nose to the ground, and he's the one who's looking up. So I learned a lot from him, to broaden my vision and to think of bigger things. Okay, so that was a very good education for me. And being a mentor, I have a lot of women students who come to me, because it's very comfortable, especially in our profession. You see the timelines for us. We are 22 when we finish our MBBS. And then everybody is sitting on your neck saying you have to get married. And then you have 2 kids on the way. Then you have to do your post graduation. Then we have to qualify further. Then we have to do, if you choose a clinical subject like mine, you're always worried about the patients. At one point in time, I think when I was in the hospital, I was thinking of home. When I was at home, I was thinking of hospital. It's totally like a schizophrenic. I told my sister, I think I'm going to break down the middle. This is what is happening to me. And now I sympathize with a lot of my women students who come to me, because when they are in that stage of life between 23 and 26, when everything is, so full, and they feel like a rubber band being pulled in 2 different directions, they need somebody to talk to. They need somebody to tell you that this will get over. Don't worry, this is over. In a few more years, there's light at the end of the tunnel. So when they see you, they feel quite happy. And that is the kind of mentoring that we need in our profession. And I have a lot of women students. Even yesterday, I had a student of mine who came with both her children, and we are like family, because when she was pregnant during her course, she was really in tears. And then I told her, I also did the same mistake. Don't worry, it will be all right. So this happens to all of us. I think it's for all women, because we go through our careers and our home life peaks at the same time. And there is a 10-year period when you're completely crazy, and the air will crackle if you walk around. It's that kind of feeling that you have. And I think that for that, I think you need a senior person, a woman, who will tell you not to worry, and this will get over, and you should be fine. And don't give up on your dreams just because this period is hard. So that's the kind of mentoring that I do.
That's great. I think all of us wish we had somebody during that period. This idea of both peaking at the same time. I remember my women in business professor made us do a lifeline to say, where do you want your career to be? Where do you want your personal life to be? And I'm like, oh, it's the same year that I want everything. So it's very real. It's a, that sort of paradox is very real. Thank you. Nita, we spoke, and you're very passionate about mentors in general. And I think you've had a lot of experiences, both being one, but having your own mentors. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think like Dr. Sudha said, we didn't have too many female mentors, who were senior to us, but I did have a really amazing postdoc mentor. Initially, I was extremely skeptical about, joining. So I had like two PIs, who I reported to. One was the chief of cardiology, and the other one was the lady who I, also worked with. But she and I now, I think it's been 15 years since I've, worked with her. But till date, she's been my biggest champion. And then we discuss about, how we lack the, female mentors. And then when I moved back to India, I think there were hardly any female mentors. I mean, there were lots of friends who were like my personal mentors, if I may say. I think we have these different buckets of professional mentors, then personal mentors. So I had an amazing set of, personal mentors, which were more female because they could relate to what I was going through. And professionally, I had a lot of, at each point, I had a male mentor. And I think that's helped me reach where I am because, I think you can see only this far in terms of your professional journey. And I did have a very varied experience from being a scientist to being in academic world to back to, again, corporate startup. So I've been at a startup as well. But each of these paths, I had a mentor to guide me through that, think of this as an opportunity to learn. I think there's no, bad learning experience. Even from bad experiences, you learn a lot to, see what you shouldn't be doing when you are in that position. And then going back to being a mentor, I hope I am a mentor to a lot more girls. I definitely am mentor to a lot of the younger girls. I mean, including age of Priyanjali's age group. There are lots of, women startup, CEOs who reach out to me. And then even, within the organization, the corporate organizations that I worked at, I think there were a lot of younger women who used to come up to me, and I would, I hope I was more like as a friend to them. And I still am in touch with a lot of them. And for my kids, I have two girls, teenagers, 17 and 13. So whenever I go to their school, and I've been going to their school for a while now, so I ensure that, I make sure that I make it a point to ask the girls to ask the question first. And, the girls, and I did see that early on, girls are quieter, even when they are like just 7, 8 years old, they learn to just not ask the questions. And I say, even if it's a stupid question, I want to ask. And then no question is stupid. So I think that's when they start opening up. And then I also make sure that any girls who are in a meeting, make sure that they're sitting at the table and not somewhere behind us, or not sit at back of the room, come up in the front. So I think I try to do those little things to try to be a good mentor and learn from my mentors as well.
That's great. So Priyanjali, just coming to you, obviously, you seek and have had the opportunity to look at mentors. What are your expectations of a mentor that you would have, right? Like all of us get asked. I'm always curious, what are you hoping for in a mentor? What do your best mentors do for you?
My best mentors, honestly, ideally have the picture that I always had in my mind is right here in front of me on the screen, all of you. So I'm very proud to say that all of you are women. So may sound a little gender biased, but I'm happy to be a little gender biased. So this is what I've always wanted, to show me path. As I told you, I didn't ever do any job in my life before I started my organization. I didn't have a professional experience apart from what the clinics in the college were offering. And also I did not have any sense of technology or business. So for me, I had to go out there and look for the people. I didn't even know what the right mentor will give me back. I just knew that I need advice on various things. And as Nita ma'am said, that for me, I really found amazing male mentors also early on in my life. So to me, they all are coaches, and they all bring the rich experience of working in impact world, in business world, in the world of technology. And one of them happens to be Dr. Richard Dasher from Stanford University. So he really gave me a very tough time. And I used to be so scared that I used to feel he's like my principal, and I'm every time meeting him giving an exam. And he really groomed me. And now I have the confidence to run my business and take decisions on my own. So that has not happened without, that couldn't have happened without people like him. And I can't miss out more. There's a big list of names, but my father has always been my coach since childhood. And he always told me that if you want to do something for the world, choose what you can give value through. Don't just stay in the world and take and go away. So that was an ideal thing that was left in my mind. So yeah, these two people have impacted my life a lot.
So it's a lot of inspiration, not very prescriptive, but just pushing you to kind of do what you always knew you could do. That's great.
Yeah.
So Shama, I wanted to bring you in here, and then we're going to take a couple of questions that have come in after this. You know, we spoke when we were prepping that most of us don't have the privilege of having exposure to a very different type of socioeconomic class and community, you know, activists and community leaders. You see many of these challenges, whether it be the rubber band challenge or whether it be, you know, the confidence level of young girls, like what Nita was talking about at a young age, they don't come out, or like what Priyanjali was saying, that this idea of like confidence building and pursuing. How does all of what we're talking about translate in a totally different group of women? If this was a community meeting and not one of this very august group, how would that conversation be different? Would the challenges be different?
Virginia, thank you for that question. And it's amazing because I actually don't think the challenges would be different, right? You know, in the slums of Bangalore or in the rural parts of the country, or, you know, any city, you take it in India. Actually, I have been in conversations with privileged women and underprivileged women in other parts of the world. And actually the challenges are not that different, right? So I'm actually speaking at a panel next week with a partner organization's representatives. She's another woman leader. We're talking about, you know, self-belief and women leadership. And the struggles that other women have, right? Early on, what choices do you make? Do you have the agency to make those choices? I think the one difference is that we perhaps were able to choose whatever we wanted to or were guided into. Sometimes the choice is missing. But once a choice is made for you, what do you do best with that, right? So I think depending on you know, what your age is, how much agency you have, and how much control you have around resources and decisions is often a challenge. But they're still struggling with work. How do you balance work and home? You know, you want to change society, but you don't get accepted. I mean, women leaders often that I'm working with, even if they're at the grassroots level, are often talking about the fact that they may not get listened to, or the world is still very male dominated and women are expected to behave in certain ways. And you have to, I mean, so I think the context is probably a little different, but otherwise the challenges are often very, very much similar, right? And I mean, just, you know, you were talking about young people, and what struck me was that I was listening to one of my colleagues talk about our adolescent school program that we've been working with. And over the last year, we know mental health has taken a huge hit, right? And coming in now, I think, you know, you and I are talking about being able to find mentors and support and coaching. that's just not available to them, right? Counseling isn't even a term that's acceptable or understood, but they need that support. And I think they don't have access to possibly what some of us could access if we at least looked for it. They probably couldn't access it. But I think the challenges are very, very similar, probably a little bit more intense, more pressure cooker situations. And I think the rubber band is true of all of us. You know, I chose to have a child later in life, but the rubber band just happens instead of your 20s, it happens in your 30s. If you have children later, or you peak your career at a different time, the rubber band will happen at a different space. So I think, and I have these conversations not just with all of you, but also the women I work with, right? And I think whether you're an health worker in a rural area or an urban area, whether you're a clinician or counselor or whatever. I mean, most of my team is we're 70% women, just internally. And then we work with a lot of women, factory workers, right? They're dealing with health issues. We deal with them too. So how do you bring exercise back into your life? It's a struggle for us. It's even more of a struggle for them, and we try to sort of co-creatively find solutions for all of that. So I think a lot of the challenges are really the same.
Yeah, and you can see in the Q&A box this idea of actually dealing with the rubber band has really struck people, right? And also the pink tax, which I'm presuming, my understanding of the pink, Pragati, the pink tax, if I understand, you can clarify in the box, is that period when you actually have a child or start a family that makes you kind of take a step back in your career. I'm presuming, Pragati, that's what you were asking. I know that, and I'll say this on behalf of us, there's no one right answer to deal with that rubber band phase. But I'm just curious for, at least for Nita, Shama, and Sudha, who've kind of been through that, would you have any constructive advice that could help? There's no one answer. There's no checklist. If there was, Dr. Sudha would have written a book along with her diabetes book to say, this is what you do. But obviously there isn't that. So, it's sort of, what would you say? And if you did have something to share and offer, since it is a question that has been raised by the audience.
I mean, I think definitely child, having you do have to take a break, right? And then actually I didn't take a break when I had my kids, and both my kids were born in US, and I had excellent daycare facilities provided by the university there. So I didn't have to take a break. In fact, I worked throughout. It's when I moved back to India, I realized that the kind of support you get here, it's not really like the quality support that you could get, and you would feel comfortable going back to work with younger babies. And I see the struggle with a lot of women here, where they take off a couple of years, and then that steps their career back for if not just end it, or at least a decade, if not a couple of years, right? So I think that's a huge toll that women end up taking because of having kids. And then, of course, no woman would want not to have it. It's a personal choice, of course. But, I think my suggestion to them would be to ensure that they have a very excellent support system in place, be it your parents. And I did have an excellent support system. My parents were there for me. Of course, they didn't live with us. They were there for me. My mom is the rock, because I did not only just take a break for a little bit for, when we moved back, but also I went for my exec MBA. So that was, again, a huge shift that I did. And that was in my 40s. I think all my classmates were half my age. So that was like laughable. A lot of them were like, are you, kidding? You've done your PhD and you're going for your MBA. And my kids were like, teenagers at that point, right? Like at least my older one was. So it was, I did have an excellent support system in my mom and my maid. My maid was the, biggest champion. She said, please go for the classes. She took off, she didn't take a single weekend off during the time I went for my classes. This was, a couple of years back, but, having that support system is extremely important. The things that my husband stopped doing when he moved back to India, he had to do the groceries, he had to do everything. But then I think for women to think that, I don't think we even think about this, right? Men have to be thinking that, hey, I need to do groceries, but women, when we're thinking about this, the panel right now, I'm thinking at the back of the mind, the kids, the dinner needs to be served, what's for breakfast tomorrow. So I think we have like at least 10 different things going on as moms. I think it changes us as people when we become moms in terms of juggling multiple things. But my recommendation to younger women is to have that support system in place when you have your babies, while you keep your career as well. Try not to stall it, because it does push us back for a couple of years, and including the promotions. So I think men also think that, hey, she's going to leave early when the baby is sick, or she's going to take off at least 6 months. I don't know whether she's going to come back from maternity leave. So all those things are there in the back of the male colleagues. So yeah, I mean, the pink tax is definitely a very, very real thing. So yeah, I'll let the other panelists chime in.
Yeah, anything, any other, I mean, there's no, like I said, right answer, Dr. Sudha or Shama, anything you want to offer? That was very useful, Nita. I mean, people don't always plan for these things as well, to say, do I have the infrastructure? It sort of happens and then you figure it out later, but maybe being a little more conscious of what you need and who can help is important. Anything to offer, Dr. Sudha or Shama?
Yeah, I agree entirely with Nita, what she said. You just have to make a mental list of what can you outsource. You can outsource looking after a house, okay? You can outsource buying the groceries, send the husband for that. And the only thing you can't outsource is parenting. So you have to be around for your children. And you would, not because of anything, but just because of the fact that you don't want to miss out on those school days. You don't want to miss out on those competitions you're prepping them up for. You want to enjoy making a project with them. You want them to learn music. You want them to learn the arts. You want them to read, and you want them to be introduced to the world that you think is lying out there for them. And I think no mother would like to miss out on that. So then what you do is, whatever else you can outsource, close your house and outsource. That's all it is. Don't worry what's coming for dinner. Ask the cook to cook something. Okay. You don't have to prove your talent by cooking very well. You can do that once in a while. You don't have to do it every day. So like that, whatever you can outsource, do it. And I fully agree with Nita that the family is very, very important, because these are all, physical kind of supports. What about the emotional support? So you need your parents, you need your husband to be understanding, and you need them to know that your career is important. And your career is not something that is secondary to somebody else's career. You also have your career ambitions, and it's not wrong. And for a woman to want to be successful is not some wrong thing to do. So people have to learn to respect that. And most families do. Most families do, especially if you come from a particular socioeconomic status. People do respect, women's careers, and that support is very important. And whatever servant you may have, the way you will trust your mother with your children, you will never trust a servant. So you need some kind of balance. And I did have the support of my parents, who came and stayed with me when I was doing my post-graduation. And the day before my exam, I think I had no servant. All of them took off, and they all know tomorrow's exam, something happened. So what can you do? I mean, you can't go and wash vessels that day. You need somebody there, and the child is crying, all kinds of things. So we go through all that by all these things, but I think it's very important to prioritize what you need to have your hands on, and what you can delegate. And never hesitate to delegate. Never think that you should prove your talent to everybody. Never do that. You don't have to compete with any person, any homemaker. You are different. You will do what you want, and what you can't do, you need not do. That's what I learned.
Yeah, the support system and kind of asking for help is a strength, not a weakness.
Yeah.
Shama, we saw your sweet son running out the back. So that
Yes.
was, I think we scared him off. There was too many women on the panel, huh? I mean,
Oh no, he's used to a gaggle of girls. That's what I'm surrounded by. So no, not actually. He was thrilled that mom decided to give him 30 minutes extra screen time, right? Friday night. And I think children learn that there are some moments that you can catch them and you'll get what you want. And so
that sounds like there's a tip right there, which is when to compromise and not try to be the perfect parent as well.
Absolutely. So I mean, I think Sudha ma'am and Nita have already covered everything. There's just one thing that I'd like to say is that, and I've been through this and it was my own sort of lesson. You don't need to be a superwoman, right? I think we're normed into trying to say, you can cook, you can do everything, and you don't have to. You really don't have to fight that battle at all. You know, my son is often asked, what is your, you know, what does your mom make that is your favorite dish? And he'll just turn around and I say, turn around and say, mom doesn't cook at home. It's okay. It's all right. You don't have to like sort of, you know, protect this thing that everybody's trying to create, right? I think the second thing that, and especially because I have a son and I'm very focused, I've been blessed to have sort of really fantastic men in my life. But that's, I think, something that as parents everywhere, we need to invest in our men and how men get shaped. Because I think otherwise this rubber band, you know, sort of is an effect only that women feel so strongly. And I think, again, that's not necessary, right? I think as partners, there's a lot of things that can, you can make decisions on and you can do it differently, right? So when my son was born, my husband decided to work from home. Right. So we've planned our careers in such a way, and we knew whose career was peaking, who could do certain things, and what was possible. So I think more women need to have that kind of support and opportunity. And yes, I was blessed to have both my in-laws and my parents around and the support. But I think if the way men sort of get shaped to be supportive. It's not just our own, you know, just not women in leadership. I think our whole society can, you know, sort of work and function better. So,
yeah, I mean, obviously it starts with picking the right partner, but, you know, let's say that when you pick your partner, I joke, I was like, your DNA changes every 7 years, but you have to be with the same. Are you technically with the same person after 7 years, or is it a new person? And so is it all null and void after 7 years? Because, you know, it's a totally new man, right? So we joke about that. But, you know,
Virginia, I just want to add, I call myself the bad mom, right? The mom who's not there. You know, the mom who cannot, I mean, does cook, but occasionally only, right? I think what's also taught, the bad mom has taught, or rather my children have learned that they have to be independent. You know, I think my daughter, my older one, she is so independent. In fact, both my husband and I, we actually take lessons from her. Instead, that she's so driven at a very young age. You know, she was a sports girl too. You know, I think I didn't even realize that I'm passing on those genes, but she was a sports girl. She would push us to take her to, you know, these classes, you know, at least 4 or 5 of them. And I think we were so exhausted at the end of it. And we would be like, you know, please pick 2 so that we can cope up with you. And same, I think, because we didn't have the time to teach her, you know, I think she realized that we're not going to be there to teach her. So she started studying by herself. And just 2 years back, when my younger one started having her exams, so, you know, the older one, she's like, you know, Tara, you need to learn by yourself, because mom is not going to go sit with you and, you know, teach you maths or teach you biology. You need to learn this by yourself. And I think I felt bad that, oh, I'm not there for, you know, her every, you know, test. But then I think that's true, right? I can't be teaching them every year, every subject. I think that teaches them independence as well. You know, working women, you know, have a lot, I think, reverse learning, or rather kids end up learning that they need to be independent. I think that's another important lesson that most of our kids learn from working women.
Yeah. I mean, I'm breaking my own rule. I'm just the moderator, but I feel so strongly about this that I want to also answer that question, if that's okay, Arnaz. But there are many women that I've tried to work with to pull them back from quitting during the rubber band period, because as a corporate leader, and a lot of it, especially if you are in a position to ask your employees the question, why do you want to quit? You know, take that extra time and that moment to really prod underneath. And I'll give you one example. There was a woman that wanted to quit. She was about 10 years into her career, similar stage that Dr. Sudha was mentioning. And, I said, what is it? You're doing so well. And she said, the board exams are coming up, right? I think it was 10 or 12 years. And so she was right on the cusp, and board exams. I said, okay, board exams. I said, how long does it take? Because there's this guilt, right? Which is that the kid doesn't do well in the board exams, it's the mother's fault, right? If the kid does well in the board exams, it's the family's pride. So I actually instituted at my company the equivalent of maternity leave during board exams, because the period of time to sit with the kid to study is about the same, right? And the idea is that, and 10th grade is a very similar stage as that. You just need to be around, there's nothing to do. Why throw away what you've accomplished for a window? And I said, what happens after the board exam? Do you like, no, then everything's fine. And I was like, so you're going to throw away where you are because of this exam? He said, I don't want anybody to tell me that my kid failed because of me and my career. So I think that there's steps that we can take to actually, and it wasn't difficult for the company to institute, a leave for a slightly older woman, so it was just an extension and a redefinition of parental leave. So I just wanted to share that we need to pause and understand why people want to opt out when they're in that phase, when they're in that rubber band. The second example that I just want to give, and I'll come back to you, Shama, is, I had a very high flying saleswoman. I'm in sales, so obviously it's a high paced environment. And I saw this one woman, she just started crying. She goes, I'm pregnant with twins. How could this happen? I'm doing so well. And I'm like, nothing happened. This is good, And she's like, well, it's just the wrong time, I'm ready to make 110. And this idea of like, sort of, forgiving yourself every day. It's just, we're so hard on ourselves, and we're just so ruthless. Like, I don't think we're as hard on anybody else in the world as we are on ourselves. And so I basically keep telling people, I was like, no decision is a bad decision. Like, you will never make a bad decision. It was the right decision at the time you made it with the information you have. That's it. It's just a decision, and you'll make a new decision tomorrow. So just this idea of I only earned the art of self-forgiveness when I was 35. I wish somebody had told me 15 years earlier, just forgive yourself every day, because no one else is going to take the time, and if you don't do it. So I just wanted to share those two pieces of advice, and the forgiveness kind of releases the rubber band just a little bit every day so that it doesn't snap. So anyway, Shama, you wanted to say something.
No, I just wanted to echo what you were saying, that I think, workplace policies are so key. I come from the social sector, and yet, not everybody has the same kind of policies, and we've tried to do that. And I think as women in leadership, that's the opportunity we have, is to create better workplace policies. So whether it's, whatever you call it sabbatical, take a sabbatical, right? We actually have paternity leave, because parental leave or maternity leave is not just for women. The dads need to be there as well, right? So I think all of these aspects, and we don't cap leave. You can take as much leave as you want. We have a flexi work environment, and this was even pre-COVID, right? Because it's men and women, and you have all of your lives that you have to sort of juggle to make things happen. So I think that's very, very important. And I couldn't agree with you more on the forgiveness. I think we deal too much with guilt. We all have, for whatever reasons, and I think women deal with guilt way more. But I think really be kind to yourself. And that's actually one of the things that I had put down for younger women, lessons is definitely be kind to yourself. There's no reason to beat yourself up as much as we do. So.
Yep, great. So we only have 5 minutes, and I just want to do a quick kind of round robin so that we've talked about a lot of amazing things. I'm smiling because I think it's a combination of not feeling alone, but also walking away with something actionable. So Priyanjali, you were listening to all this,
Yes.
What is something that stood out for you, something that you want to share as we wrap up here?
I think I'm so blessed with two things right now: internet, that is technology, and you all being accessible to me and many girls like me. I mean, we will not get this wisdom anywhere else. and coming it directly from you and learning it so early on is really, really valuable for me. And the best takeaway for me is that I'm going to connect with all of you after this and stay in touch, because I think I'm very proud today to be a part of this. Thank you.
That's great. So on that note of gratitude, I wanted to sort of end on a round robin of gratitude towards our board of directors. And I know that we spoke a little bit about 4 very important roles that our board of directors play. And, you know, as we discussed it, it's your cheerleader, your coach, your critic, and your collaborator, right? And this is really coined by, I think Sanjeev Gupta has come up with a book called, you know, How to Be Backable. And, you know, obviously these people are very important to us, but it's also an opportunity for us to thank them in a public forum. So does anybody want to kind of end on someone they want to call out and give a shout out to in an extension of gratitude? Who wants to go first? Maybe Nita, do you want to start?
Yeah, I think I'd mentioned about my, you know, cheerleader. That's my mom always, right? I think I did mention it. You know, without her, and she's not that highly educated. She dropped out of school when she was in 3rd grade. But I think not a time. I think she's always been supportive of whatever I did, be it sport or, you know, be it anything. I think she never questioned me for, you know, what I was doing. And she just believed in me. I think she's been my biggest champion. Coach, I think like I said, you know, I've had several coaches, but for the past 5 years, you know, or a couple of years, I had a couple. In fact, I think she's, you know, his wife is on the attendee list as well. Renu and her husband Sanjay, they've been my biggest coaches, both of them, the husband wife. They believe in me professionally, and you know, when I think there's a lot of self-doubt, you know, there's certain people who believe in you. You start believing in that, right? So I think it's like, I wouldn't say fake it till you make it, but, you know, sort of like at least believe. When people believe in you, there is something about you, or, you know, just I think aim for, you know, higher goals is what, you know, they've made me believe. And then, you know, I'm very grateful to both of them and my mom and my, you know, dad as well. So yeah, thanks.
Awesome. Dr. Sudha, gratitude towards anybody or anyone you want to recognize or call out?
Gratitude towards my family, because I married into a family of highly educated people who thought that it was good for a woman to have a career. In fact, even when I got married, they told me that you have to study. I put a cap on my studies. They didn't. And I did it for my own reasons, because I wanted to be with the children. So I have nobody to say for that. And my parents, my father especially, was very, very proud of whatever I did. I was the first doctor in my family. So I still continue to give medical advice on WhatsApp to a whole lot of extended family, which keeps coming all the time, send all the reports, see what it is. So yeah, so it's good to be a doctor there. I don't think I need a critic at all. I'm my worst critic. So I don't, I don't need anybody. Collaborators, yes, I've had a lot professionally. And of course, my husband, whom I use as a sounding board for many of the ideas that come to me.
Yeah, and you had mentioned he too is a doctor, so that's great to have that in the house. Wonderful. Shama?
So I want to echo Dr. Sudha. I think I'm my own worst critic, but I want to look at critics also as people who sort of challenge you from your comfort zone. And so for that, I think I want to pick my current board members. As CEO, I'm also secretary on my board, and I have a mentor and chief mentor who are also co-founders of the organization that I currently lead. And I think they've always challenged to help grow, right? And I see that as a way of being critical, but also being supportive. And also the chairperson and the vice chairperson of our board, I think at key points, they've come in, right, and stepped in and supported, challenged, been critical, but always with sort of a positive direction. And I think that's very, very important. I have a lot of people to be grateful for, but I'm going to stop here and hand over to Priyanjali.
Great.
Thank you. So I have a huge list. Okay, but I would start with coach. My board members. They have been so great. I'm so grateful that they take out the time to in their busy schedule and take some important decisions with us at strategic level, which helps us do lesser mistakes in business. And in personal life, it's definitely my father and mother. So they are the coaches personally and professionally. Cheerleaders in personal life are friends. They just cheer you up at any moment. And also my sister, she is a great cheerleader. And in professional life, the cheerleaders are honestly my team. I'm so blessed to have a team like that who just take up, there's so much challenge in startup world, and they just take all the challenges that come through their way and work together as a team. And same with collaborators. The team I have is my family. In my professional life, they are my collaborators, and my family, which who is collaborating with me since so long in my journey, is a great way to be with a girl who wants to do what she wants to do. And the last thing is critic. I agree with everyone. I am the worst. I am very hard on myself, but the takeaway I'm going to take from here is not being hard on myself. So yeah.
That's great. So I promised Dr. Sudha that I am a champion of ending on time, and I'm 2 minutes over. So, but it was so important to do this last round, and I think it was totally worth our while. So with that, we wrap up for the evening. Arnaz, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Virginia. Thank you to the panel. I will quickly hand over the mic for a brief moment to my coach and my cheerleader, who's DVR, and he will Professor DVR Shashadri for people who do not know him, and he will give a small vote of thanks, and we'll end it there. Over to you, DVR.
Thank you, one and all. It was very fascinating listening to all of you. I'd just like to take a couple of minutes, maybe two, to complete the vote of thanks. The EHAC was a brainchild about 3 years back. It started. We have many stalwarts, and we are doing some very interesting work. Of course, Arnaz is leading the whole effort, but we have some incredible people who are at the helm of affairs. I'd like to say that the world is changing very fast. The latest big event was the Mars landing, where we saw the Indian woman who was actually essentially guiding the whole vehicle that finally landed on Mars. And it was a high point, I'm sure, for humanity, and of course for women and for Indians. And to get women to the center stage has become a norm. Sudha had actually pointed out that when she joined, she was the sole woman, I believe, in general medicine. And today there are 10 out of 24 faculty, which is a huge, huge shift. Women have proved time and again that they're as good or better than men. I run a small team within ISB called Center for Business Markets, and it won't be a surprise. I'm a very avid believer of the power of women. So 6 out of 6 are all women, and I have no regrets. They do incredible job. I made the mistake about 6 months back of organizing a panel which had all men, including myself, and I was mauled over the charcoals, basically saying that you had no business to call it a panel, it should be a manel. So there I learned my lesson in a very, very hard way. And when we started ideating for this webinar series, Arnaz and I had some discussion. She's an amazing person herself, keeps coming up with new initiatives. And the latest is the buddy system, where she pairs 2 interested people, one a mentor, the other the mentee. And we have had several rounds of such buddy systems operating in the last couple of months. The idea of an all-women's forum to celebrate Women's Week was whole and soul Arnas. And the first panel was very successful. We had primary care as the theme, where we had some nurses from very remote areas as well. And then she took up the initiative of She Rocks, where we had 8 interviews, all women conducting interviews to women again. So actually, if I look at this whole star cast, I'm the only odd late entrant into this whole thing towards the very end of the celebration of Women's Week. And it's good that it's that way. I think we had wonderful discussions. All of you talked about your life journeys, all are incredible achievers, role models for the audience. And I believe that role models are very important in shaping careers of people. So the impact you have made will have long-lasting effects for decades after today. Importance of mentors was talked about, and the need for support system. I heard a few new terms, rubber band and pink tags. So I learned quite a few important takeaways for me. And Sudha talked about the importance of balance, which I thought was very important in any avocation. I do want to end with saying that transformation requires just one chat with someone of substance. And I think today we had 4 of you who were great achievers in your own lives on the panel. And you made huge impact on those who have heard you. So it's more than one chat. People had several stalwarts actually talking about their lives. It was ably anchored by Virginia, who is also an executive doctoral student at ISB. She is herself a great achiever, full of energy, bubbling with ideas all the time. And I happen to have the good fortune of mentoring her at ISB. A secret I want to let out to you all. I know some of the people on this panel for a very long time. Sudha for 45 years, believe it or not. Nita for 5 years, Arnas for 3, and Virginia for 2 years. Once again, a very big thanks to all the wonderful women on this panel today and also the audience. I look forward to your continued association with EHAC. I think you enrich this whole forum manifold, and have wonderful weekend ahead and great lives ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Bye-bye. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye. Have a
Bye.
good weekend.
Bye.
Bye.